This is Anchor Your Retirement with Barb Gulin from Safe Harbor Financial Planning Group. When a part of your financial strategy is out of tune, your long-term goals, your retirement savings, and your legacy can all suffer. With many years of experience in the financial industry, Barb Gulin provides her clients and prospects the information they need regarding Social Security, retirement income planning, wealth management, and much more. Listen in as we address your financial concerns and provide helpful strategies to put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now here is Anchor Your Retirement with Barb Gulin.
Welcome to the Anchor Your Retirement podcast. I'm your host, Barbara Gulin, and hanging out with me on this fine fall day is my co-host, Tony Shore. How you doing, Tony?
Oh, Barbara, great to be here. I'm excited about this one. This is an interesting show, something I don't know as much about, so I'm looking forward to learning on this one.
I get to play Stump Tony?
Oh, wow. Don't do that. I don't want to embarrass myself, but I am going to learn a lot on this show. We were talking before the show, and I've been reviewing the materials for the show, and it's a fascinating topic, and it's going to really appeal to especially certain listeners out there. So I'm excited about this one.
I hope so. Maybe you can play Stump Barb, and we'll see if I really know my stuff.
Oh, I'll probably have a few questions, Barb. I will. Well, Barb, I've been good. As you know, I took a trip to Cleveland, of all places, this past weekend. I know the Cleveland sports teams, and everybody makes jokes about Cleveland, but really a great city downtown.
In Kansas City, we can't joke about Cleveland because they keep beating us.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, they have a nice downtown. The people were nice. I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, saw a couple of concerts. So I had a great weekend last weekend. How about you, Barbara? What have you been doing?
Well, my younger daughter came home from boarding school for a visit this weekend.
Oh.
So got to hang out with her. She got to see her dog. Had some other family come in from Omaha to see my daughter. So, yeah, so I need a weekend to recover from my weekend because it was a whole lot of go, along with a Chiefs football party at church on Sunday.
Nice.
I'm not kidding you. Sunday night, I went to bed at like 8:30.
Oh, wow.
And I looked at my daughter and I'm like, I am so tired. I am dizzy. So unless the house is on fire, don't wake me up.
Yeah. Well, good. You went to bed early, got caught up on your sleep. But that sounds like a full weekend, and the Chiefs won. So that's a great thing, right?
It was an ugly win, but it was a win.
Hey, a win is a win, right? So
yes.
Oh, well, that's good. At least they won. So and I know you've been busy besides that with work. I know you love meeting with people and talking with people. So I want to encourage our listeners out there right away before we jump in, if they have questions or hear something that piques an interest or a curiosity, I hope they'll call you and set up a no charge, no obligation consultation. And Barbara, give our listeners that information, how they can get a hold of you before you jump in today.
Website is going to be anchoryourretirement.com. And our phone number is area code 913-553-6222. And they select the option for appointments and scheduling. They'll get a hold of a member of our team that'll set up that consultation either with me or one of our other qualified agents who understand, especially for our federal employees, since that's going to be the group that's going to be really interested in today, understanding how their benefits work. We were talking about that a little bit beforehand, that both of my parents were federal employees. You have family members that are federal employees.
Yeah.
And finding an advisor that understands how their benefits work and that can look at long-term consequences of things is like super important.
Yeah, it's huge. And I was telling you how I have family that are government employees, my brother-in-law and his wife, and they were talking about things like TSPs and things that, I'm not as well versed in as I am some other things like IRAs, Roth IRAs, Social Security maximization, these types of things. But taxes later on can really get you. And
They really can.
and what are you doing with those benefits? Did you a lot of federal employees, I understand, actually can retire at a decent age and then maybe go back to work as a contractor or consultant.
Yeah, if your career federal service, you can, they have what's called a minimum retirement age.
Yep.
Federal employees call it MRA. Federal employees speak a lot of acronym. So I've gotten really good at that over the years.
Yep.
And depending on the year you were born, your minimum retirement age is anywhere between 55 if you're law enforcement, on up to 58 years old.
Yeah.
And some law enforcement people can retire as early as age 50.
Wow. Yeah, and I know some military, and if you've worked in certain areas of hardship, you can retire earlier. Others, it's 62. But I think the latest retirement date I've heard for career federal employees, a lot of them is 62. They can retire, right?
Right. If they've got at least 5 years of service at age 62, they can retire with a full pension.
Wow. Yeah.
So, now if you're one of the younger ones at minimum retirement age, MRA, that requires 30 years of credited service.
Sure.
Okay. Or for law enforcement, it can be 20 to 25 years of service.
Okay.
Or or on the civilian side, you can be 60 with 20 years of service. Now you understand why my federal benefits training classes go on for like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, because there's a whole bunch of if-thens.
Yeah, and I know this is something that you've specialized in, and you've helped a lot of federal employees out there with their benefits and retirement planning, because there are so many rules and ins and outs to this, aren't there?
There are, and the nuances of it and making sure that it works right. And then throw on top of that, sometimes an agency will have a reduction in force for whatever reason, and you're dealing with something called an early out. And all of a sudden, some people are like wanting to day drink, figuring out all of these options and what makes sense. I am not one of them, but you know what I mean.
No. Yes. Yeah, it can drive you nuts. I mean, government rules, it's just like IRS rules and regulations. The government always seems to complicate things, and there are so many different rules. So not everybody's situation is exactly the same. So, I think a lot of retirees, especially federal employees, when they're planning for retirement, just ask a buddy, hey, how'd you do this? And sometimes, on a base level, that can be a little helpful, but you're not the same. Your situation is not the same as theirs.
It isn't. But one thing that is across the board similar for all federal employees is their thrift savings plan, or TSP. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Wait, TSP? You said thrift savings plan. I thought it stood for terrific. I thought thrift savings plan, terrific pizza, something about terrific pizza in there. I
terrific Supreme Pizza.
There you go. Terrific Supreme Pizza. Yeah, I was trying to think of something. Yeah. Terrific specialty pizza. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. I always thought it meant that, but I guess not.
You like pineapple on your pizza?
I can do it. I prefer
not to.
Yeah, most people prefer. I don't mind it. There's only three things I can't eat on pizza: mushrooms, olives, and anchovies. Otherwise, anything goes.
I'll agree with you on the anchovies part, but I'm sorry. I like the mushrooms and the olives, so we'll just put them on half when we get a pizza.
Yeah,
okay?
We'll put them on half. Yeah, I can't do mushrooms because some I have an allergic reaction to, and I just don't
then we'll just skip the mushrooms altogether.
Yeah, and I don't like olives, so yeah, I can pick those off. Yeah.
Okay, my little Italian heart just broke a little bit with that.
I love olive oil. Does that count? I love olive oil.
It does. We'll give you credit.
I cook everything and I soak everything in olive oil. I love it.
Well, style points for olive oil usage.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I get a hard time for not liking mushrooms and olives in my family and friends. Most of them love it, but I can't do it. Sorry about that.
I'll respect the whole mushroom allergy thing. And sometime when we're off air, I will tell you about the video from when my dad got remarried that involves my sister popping an olive into my brother-in-law's mouth because he feels the same way about olives that you do.
Oh.
And it's like highlight reel worthy. Nothing gross, but definitely entertaining.
But his face probably, yeah, the face he made. If you put a black olive in my mouth and made me eat it, well,
he didn't eat it. He didn't eat it, but
just the taste of it.
Redheaded and freckled makes for one of those facial expressions that were we in the era of social media would have been a meme.
Sure. Okay, so thrift savings.
I love you, Michael.
Yeah, there you go. So I got us off topic, but thrift savings plans, or TSPs, what are they?
It is the government's equivalent of a 401k or a 403b plan for those of you that work in schools and hospitals. Okay. You have three components of your retirement when you're a federal employee. You've got Social Security, which we all have in theory.
Yep.
You've got your pension, which is either FERS, FERS, or CSRS. Most people are FERS. Okay. Which is the newer one that was adopted in the 1980s. There's still a few people who are still working that came on prior to that are in the old retirement system, but they are becoming fewer and further between every year. And then you have what's called your thrift savings plan, which is your discretionary savings. Now, back when the thrift savings plan was launched in 1986-ish, the only fund that you could participate in was something called the G Fund, and those were government-backed securities. Okay? It's the only retirement vehicle where you can acquire those government securities, to the best of my knowledge. Somebody out there is probably going to correct me, and if they do, so be it. They have, over the years, offered additional funds. They have the F Fund, which is things like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Okay. Yep. It is government-backed bonds, but not government bonds. Then you have the C Fund, which emulates the S&P 500 stock index.
Yep. The
S Fund, which is smaller cap stocks that I think Facebook before it was Facebook or Meta, Google before it was Alphabet, Amazon when it was still in Jeff Bezos's garage. Okay.
Sure.
Smaller caps, but up and coming. And then last, and in my opinion, least, now remember, I'm not giving anybody investment advice here. So if you've got questions about it, please reach out to us and I will visit with you guys one-on-one. Don't take anything that I say today as gospel or as blanket investment advice. It definitely isn't. It's just for information purposes.
Right. You'll get into the deep stuff and give the serious advice once you meet with somebody one-on-one so you can get to know their personal situation, right?
Right. So, but the last fund is the I Fund, I standing for international. Okay. And the bulk of the I Fund is invested in Europe, along with Israel and I believe Australia. But it misses out on a lot of emerging markets, some in East Asia, in part because we don't want to invest in China.
Well, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But those 5 funds make up the core investment options in your thrift savings plan. And the thing to understand is that if you are a new hire coming into the federal government, they're going to automatically enroll you so that 3% of your salary is being put into your thrift savings plan.
That's good.
And then your agency is automatically going to put in 1% whether or not you elect to participate. Because if you really are hardcore deciding that you don't want to participate, which I'll probably look at you kind of silly if you tell me that's the case.
Yeah,
they're going to automatically put in, they're going to automatically put in 1%. And then they're going to match dollar for dollar up to 5%. So if you're putting in 5%, if you defer 5% of your salary, the government is going to match that 5%. It's a 100% return on your money straight out of the gate.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's huge, right? I mean, you're getting a match. You're getting the 1%. It's wow. And I like the fact that it's a forced savings, because too many people, might say, I want that. I'd rather spend it now in my paycheck. But you need to save for your future. You really
do. And the Secure Act, the Secure 2.0 mandated that with a lot of companies. A lot of the bigger companies are now shifting to that model where you have to opt out rather than opting in. The thing to understand about TSP is that if you don't elect any investment options, everything is automatically going to go into the G fund.
Okay.
Now, back when the G fund was first around, the G fund was paying about 9% a year.
Sure, that's good.
It's tied to our interest rates, though. So while the G fund is paying a little bit better the last year and a half to 2 years,
sure,
within the last 10, 11 years, there have been years where the rates of return have been right at or less than 1%.
Oh, ouch. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's not going to keep up with inflation.
No.
And, have I talked about the rule of 72 yet? I can't remember.
No, not in this show today. I don't know about today.
I don't know if we've ever talked about it on the podcast.
I don't think you have, actually, at all.
But the rule of 72 is something that I think everybody needs to understand. And if you take 72 and divide it by the rate of return for an investment, that tells you roughly how long it's going to take that investment to double in value. Okay.
Okay.
So right now, this year, the G fund is probably going to return somewhere around 4% with where interest rates are. Okay. If we divide 4 into 72, I'm realizing that I should have done math before we did the podcast today. But that's going to give us
I can pull up a calculator.
That's going to give us roughly 18 years.
Sure.
Okay. I went to engineering school. If I can't math in my head, people are going to lose respect.
I'm a radio show co-host. I was told there would be no math, Barbara.
But we're looking at roughly 18 years for that money to double. Okay. 2 or 3 years ago when I was talking about this, we were looking at the rate of return being about 2%. That's a whole lot easier for me to figure out, which would have been 36 years. Take that and compare it to the C fund. Again, the C fund emulates the Standard & Poor's 500 stock index.
Yeah, the
top
S&P 500
companies, top 500 companies in the world. Over the last 11 years, as of the beginning of this year, so if somebody goes out and looks at the TSP website and is like nitpicking numbers, okay? At the beginning of this year, the annualized rate of return, meaning the average, was 13.95% over the last 11 years.
Wow.
Okay. Let's drop that down to 12% to make the math easy. We divide 72 by 12. That means that investment is going to double in 6 years.
Wow. Versus 18 or 32 or 36.
36. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't take that long to figure out. I hear people all the time when I do these federal benefits training that they're in the G fund because they don't like risk.
Right.
Well,
and I want to
go ahead.
Well, I want to state, Barbara, before we move on, just so everyone understands, and they like us to say this, that you're talking about actual rates of return for these investments that the government uses for TSPs. Right. You're not necessarily making individual recommendations to people, and you're not saying that just because at one time a certain fund, what fund was it that returned better?
The C fund.
The C fund was at 13%. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. They make us say that all the time, and we know
100%. Yeah.
Right. But we do know, it's like the market. You can't guarantee the market just because this stock did this last year that it's going to do that this year. We all know that, and nobody has a crystal ball as to what the C fund will do. But you can look at its history over the last 10 years. And like the stock market over the last 100 years, 70 to 75% of the time, it's an up year. And
Right.
so, we know that has happened. I mean, we at least have 100 years to look at with that.
Right.
And
This is not me looking into my crystal ball. This is me
Right.
looking into my rear view mirror.
yeah, exactly. But it makes sense. You can't ignore what's happened before
No.
either. You have to make educated in decisions in order to make an intelligent decision. Yeah.
That is exactly where we're going with this.
Yeah.
And risk comes in all different shapes and sizes. Okay. Oil and gas futures is a much more significant risk. Buying options, significant
Sure.
risk. Okay.
Gambling. It's basically gambling
Significant
because you have
risk.
no idea what could happen tomorrow with that.
Right.
Right.
When we're looking at the G fund and the principal being somewhat protected,
Yeah.
the risk that we're looking at there is interest rate risk and it not making enough money to keep pace with inflation and to make sure that your spending power doesn't decline.
Yeah. That's a good point.
It's a trade-off. I'm not saying either one is better than the other. I'm saying that you as an individual working with a qualified fiduciary who understands how your federal benefits work need to make that decision together so that everybody understands where you're headed, where you want to go, and if that's going to get you there.
Right. And you've been doing this long enough and helping your clients who are federal employees with their TSPs, and you can look at their situation and say, hey, based on your personal situation and the last 5-10 years, you'd probably want to go this route. But they do have choices to make. And it's great that they have choices. It doesn't have to go into the G fund. It
No.
doesn't have to go into the C fund. They have options, right?
They do. They do. And if you are listening to this, trying to figure out how or where you allocate your TSP or how you change your payroll deferrals, that's something I'm glad to help you with one-on-one, because something else that people also need to understand is that there is a Roth option in the TSP.
Oh, wow.
And unlike a Roth IRA, you're not under income constraints to determine whether or not you can participate in it. If you're a federal employee and you're a neurosurgeon making $340,000 a year or more, you can participate in the Roth TSP.
Yeah. So there's no income limits like on a standard Roth IRA. But why do you bring up Roth? Why might that be a great option? It's because of the tax free status, right?
Right. Again, something that we were talking about in your family member circumstance is between their pension, the fact that they now work as a contractor and are
Sure.
making a different income level. And I have several clients that did the exact same thing your family members have done, where they retire from federal service and go back 2 weeks later doing the exact same thing, working as a contractor, making a different income level while they're drawing their federal pension.
A full pension. Yeah.
And then once you add Social Security into that, when they actually do retire, when we get to the point that you're tax deferred, your pre-tax savings, you're 73 to 70 whatever years old, Secure 2.0 said, you have to start taking those required minimum distributions.
Yeah.
You can put yourself in a heck of a tax pickle.
Yeah.
Because you're having to take out, if you're in a situation where you're not drawing that money down now, and that money continues to compound and grow, number one, yay for you. You've got the nest egg. Okay.
Sure.
But when it comes time for required minimum distributions, boo, you're going to get kicked in the tail with taxes if you haven't worked with somebody ahead of time to try to mitigate that tax liability.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you brought up something there that I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
And that is, we're talking about TSPs, a thrift savings plan for government employees. And it's like an employer-sponsored retirement plan, right? Where you put money in, it grows, and then you have it to use in retirement. And those are of our listeners who aren't federal employees. You have 401ks, 403bs, other things. But the difference is I always heard that government employees, because they got the TSP, did not get Social Security. Where does Social Security come into play for federal employees?
Okay.
How does that work?
Social Security for those people, and this is why I do these podcasts, because Tony, you just heard something around the water cooler that isn't 100% accurate. Okay. There's two retirement systems currently in place with the federal government. You've got CSRS, which is Civil Service Retirement System.
Yeah.
That was prior to 1982 or 83. Okay. Sure. I was in middle school back then, so I'm a little fuzzy on the dates, and, sure, was up late last night getting my kid on the plane and getting her back home. If you were a civil service employee, you did not pay into the Social Security system.
Okay.
Those employees, their pension could get to be up to 80% of their salary.
Wow.
If they worked for 42 years.
Wow.
Okay. An amazing deal. If you're getting 80%, you don't need Social Security.
No.
However, if you're not paying into Social Security, you then have to start paying out of pocket for Medicare Part A and a few other things. But that's another topic for another podcast.
Sure.
The newer system that is in place now is FERS, Federal Employee Retirement System.
Right.
That is a lower pension amount. Okay, Cliff Notes version, you're basically going to get 1% of your adjusted basic pay, which is your base pay plus locality pay. Those of you who are federal employees understand what I'm saying with all of this. Because based on, if you work in San Francisco, your cost of living is higher than if you live in Des Moines. Mm-hmm. So there's a locality adjustment for that job to help offset the difference in cost of living. In the FERS system, you're going to get roughly 1% per year, or 1.1% if you work past the age of 62 and have at least 20 years of service of your high 3 adjusted basic pay. Okay. I've just said a lot of stuff that should have your eyes rolling into the back of your head, because as a federal employee, it means nothing to you.
Sure.
Okay. But those of you who are federal employees will understand what I'm saying. So if you work for 30 years and you're under the age of 62, go at that, because you can retire before 62 with that service and still get a pension.
Sure.
You're going to get 30% of that adjusted basic pay. 30% is a little bit less than 80%.
Yeah.
Therefore, but those in the FERS system have paid into Social Security. So they're going to get their Social Security benefit as well.
Okay. So they are paying, most federal employees are paying Social Security tax.
Right.
Okay. That is a misconception that I had maybe from my parents, because they were, they're not in the federal system, and they always told me, oh yeah, federal workers don't pay Social Security tax.
And they didn't back then.
Yeah.
They didn't back then.
Okay.
They also have to pay for Medicare Part A and things that we prepaid.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining it. So then you get your TSP and you can get Social Security. But do the same Social Security rules apply to them? They can't draw on Social Security until they reach 62 or their full retirement age?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you retire prior to age 62 and you have enough credited years of service, the federal employment system gives you a supplement to your pension that's based on your age 62 Social Security benefit.
Okay.
Clear as mud, right?
No, that explains it. I think my brother-in-law, and I've had other people who are in the, he did mention that. So, okay.
But those supplement rules are the same as if you retire prior to full retirement age with Social Security, where you have an income restriction before they start taking some of that benefit back.
Okay.
And for somebody like your brother-in-law, I'm guessing he's making a little bit more than $1,770 a month right now.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't get the supplement at all.
Right.
But he can still get his pension. While you're drawing a pension, you're also still eligible for your health insurance through the federal government.
Yeah, see, that's nice. Yeah, that's huge. Because that's for the rest of us who aren't federal employees. That's one of the biggest problems of retiring early is you can't afford health care.
Right.
Because most private companies aren't going to continue paying your health care, even
No.
for executives in a lot of cases. Used to be there were big companies who would, as part of they'd have a pension and you could get health care. They still cover some of your health care. And then they took away that from most employees, but some executives still got that. Now, from what I've heard talking to people, there are very few companies out there. Private
now you
companies.
have COBRA insurance coverage that specifies how long you're eligible for it. And after that, you either have to go out to the exchange, the healthcare exchange, or marry somebody who has health insurance if you're not married, or go back to work somewhere where you can get those health benefits.
Yeah, that's tough. It is tough because you can't qualify for Medicare until you're 65. So, and that's another show, but that does play into this.
A whole other topic for a whole other time, and it does play into it quite a bit.
Yeah, healthcare benefits are part of government benefits, government employees, federal
and
benefits.
Part of their retirement. Yep.
Yeah, and it can get really complex, and so I'm just amazed that you have all this knowledge and that you're able to help people. So I'm sure if we have anyone listening to this podcast and show today that is a federal employee, they should sit down with you and make sure that they're maximizing those federal benefits and doing the right thing.
That's what we're here for, because it can be so convoluted and so complicated.
Yeah.
I've had people that tell me that, they're 62, or they're 60, so they're going to go ahead and retire, or they're 57 or 58, so they're going to go ahead and retire, but they've only got 7 or 8 years of service, and they don't understand that they're going to leave most of their pension on the table by doing that.
Yeah.
So, it really does pay to talk to somebody who's going to give them that advice and not just try to take, their thrift savings can grow quite substantially. I mean, for somebody that gets in there young, actively pays attention and doesn't just leave it in the G fund and has that match, I routinely talk to people in their late 50s that can have $700, $800, $1 million in their thrift savings plan because of the beauty of compound interest.
Yep.
And there are other, I don't even want to call them advisors. I want to call them insurance and financial salespeople out there.
Sure.
That see that big dollar amount, think about the commission they can make, and don't give somebody the best advice.
Yeah. You see that happen a lot, and that's
breaks
not
my
good.
Heart.
Yeah,
breaks
and I know
heart.
that you always look out for your client's best interests, and
it's my job.
Yeah. If there's a choice between A and B, and if they went with B, it might benefit you a little bit more, but A is a better fit for them. You're going to tell them
then
to go with
A all the way.
Yeah, and that's the difference right there. And that's why you need to find a trusted financial professional. Mm-hmm. Well, I know there's a lot more to this. We'll probably do a part 2 on federal benefits at some point, or a refresher.
Yes.
But Barbara, let our listeners out there know how they can get a hold of you if they have questions or need to get a plan in place, whether it's a federal, whether a little earthquake there. Did you see that? No, I bumped the camera, but let them know in case for our listeners who aren't federal employees, they still need a financial plan and a retirement plan. And federal employees really need help navigating these waters.
They do. They can always reach out to us at anchoryourretirement.com. That's going to take you to our website with a contact form where you can reach out to us, or call us at our offices, area code 913-553-6222. It's an honor to help all of you federal employees understand how all of this works. Most federal employees get paid 22 to 24% less than the private sector does, but the trade-off for that is this pension and the fantastic benefits that they get. It's my job as a fiduciary to help them maximize those benefits.
Excellent. Yeah. And that's the key. And that's the key to today's show. Great topic. Great show. Thanks, Barbara. Give that phone number and web address again so our listeners out there can get a hold of you.
Phone number is 913-553-6222. 888-553-6222 and go to anchoryourretirement.com. And I saw you blink, so I think we're good that time.
Yes. Yes, it did not freeze. Excellent. Yeah, I thought I'd shake things up a bit today toward the end of the show there. Barbara, great show. Federal employee benefits, so important. And wow, you've got to have somebody who is a specialist in this area help you navigate through it. I'd encourage our listeners to pick up that phone and contact you and give you a call. All right. Well, listeners, great show again today, Barbara.
Thanks, Tony. It was good to have you around, and you'll have to tell me more about the Hall of Fame.
All right. Time. I will. And that does it for today's episode of Anchor Your Retirement with our host, Barbara Gulin.
See you later.
Thank you for listening to Anchor Your Retirement. Don't pay too much for taxes or retire without a sound retirement plan. For more information, please contact Barb Gulin at Safe Harbor Financial Planning Group. Call 913-553-6222 or visit them online at anchoryourretirement.com.
Advisory services are offered through Safe Harbor Financial Planning Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Kansas. All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any other government agency. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent